Hey y'all, I know how much you love Strictly Homicide Podcast. What would you say if I told you that you can actually get paid just for listening to this show and all your other favorites? I know it sounds insane, but it's true. I recently discovered this free new app called PodCoin, and it literally pays you to listen to the podcast. Here's how it works. You listen to podcasts, and you earn PodCoins while you listen. Then you turn those PodCoins in for gift cards at places like Starbucks. Or if you're a better person than me, you can give up Starbucks and donate your PodCoins to charity. The more you listen, the more you earn. So go download the app right now on iPhone or Android. Use our code HOMICIDE, and you'll get 300 PodCoins just for signing up. You also earn extra points for listening to Strictly Homicide because it's a bonus show. And if you listen to enough of us on there, and you're not really a coffee drinker, don't pick a different company. Just send me your Starbucks money. Okay, I'm totally joking. But really, go download the app, enter the word homicide when you sign up, and then listen to this podcast or any other podcast that you love and start racking up those points. I swear it'll change the way you listen to podcasts.
One piece of smart technology could help solve a murder mystery in Arkansas.
Two Pine Bluff teens are in jail tonight facing murder charges. Police say they are in custody in connection to the shooting death of two 17-year-olds.
It was a bizarre story in Russellville, Arkansas today. A man who reportedly quit his job over low pay went on a shooting spree with two handguns.
Tributes are pouring in for Ann Presley. The Little Rock TV anchorwoman died over the weekend.
A suspect in the deadly Fayetteville shooting on New Year's Day in court this morning.
A Little Rock mother is pleading for help tonight. She is asking anyone.
Thanks for listening to Strictly Homicide, an Arkansas true crime podcast covering lesser-known cases out of the natural state. Warning. Strictly Homicide covers cases that include sexual assault, violence, and homicide. Episodes may contain explicit language and are not suitable for young ears. Listener discretion is advised. Thank you for downloading episode 25 of Strictly Homicide Podcast. This episode is part 6 in the Rushed Execution series and will cover the case of Marcel Williams, scheduled to be executed on April 24th, 2017. When the state of Arkansas discovered that their supply of midazolam was about to expire in the end of April, Governor Hutchinson made the inhumane decision to attempt to rush 8 executions in 4 separate dates. For the victim's family, this was supposed to be an end to a long drug-out process. But for the inmates, this could potentially be cruel and unusual punishment. Attempting to execute multiple inmates in one day opens up endless possibilities for error, which usually result in a botched execution. If you haven't listened to part 1 through 5 of this series, I highly recommend going back and listening. In episode 18, part 1, I covered Bruce Ward. In episode 19, part 2, I covered Don Davis. In episode 20, part 3, I covered Liddell Lee. Episode 22, part 4, I covered Stacy Johnson. In episode 23 and 24, part 5, I covered Jack Henry Jones. So for episode 25, part 6, I'll be covering the 6th inmate that was scheduled for execution in the Arkansas 8. Episode 25's case starts in Jacksonville, Arkansas, and ends in North Little Rock, Arkansas. I gave information for both of these cities in earlier episodes. Jacksonville was in Episode 20, Part 3, and North Little Rock was in Episode 4, the Orsini-MacArthur murders. So for Episode 25, I'll be giving some information about the county. North Little Rock and Jacksonville are both located in Pulaski County, Arkansas. Depending where your start and end points are, the towns are about 15 miles from each other. Pulaski County has a population of around 393,000. The county seat is also the state capital, Little Rock. On December 15, 1818, Pulaski County was the 5th county to form. The county has a total of 808 square miles, of which 760 is land. 52.6% of the population is white, 36.1% is black, 6.1% is Hispanic, 2.2% is Asian, and the remaining amount were recorded as 2 or more races. During the last election in 2016, 56.1% of the population voted Democrat, only 38.3% voted Republican, and 5.6% voted other. But don't be fooled, every other county did not vote that way. Arkansas falls right smack in the middle of the Bible Belt, so no matter where you go in the state, you're sure to see a handful of churches. In Pulaski County alone, you can find 556 congregations. 63.1% of the congregation are evangelical Protestants. About 14.7% are mainline Protestants. 13.4% are Black Protestants. 2.7% are Catholic. Under 1% is Orthodox, and the remaining 5.5% recorded as other. A little over 160,000 residents list their religion as none, which is more than any other denomination. One of the oldest water parks in the nation resides in Pulaski County, or did. Willow Springs Water Park, which closed its doors in 2013, opened its doors in 1928. 3 years after a swimmer died from the infection of amoebic meningitis, another swimmer was diagnosed with the same infection. So the owners shut the park down on July 26, 2013. The crime in this case took place in 1994. When Arkansas native Bill Clinton was president, a gallon of gas cost $1.09, and the average cost of a movie ticket was only $4.08. Way cheaper than today. Some of the best movies in history were released, like Forrest Gump and The Lion King. Popular music ranged from Snoop Dogg to the Beastie Boys. One day before the U.S. Figure Skating Championship on July 6, 1994, Nancy Kerrigan was viciously attacked after practice at the Detroit Cabo Arena, leaving her unable to compete. The attacker was paid to break her right leg by the ex-husband of Tonya Harding. The attacker then turned himself in and told the FBI everything. Later that year in June, Tonya was stripped of her title for her possible involvement in the attack. On January 17th of 1994, a 6.7 magnitude earthquake struck the San Fernando Valley. 2 aftershocks with a magnitude of 6.0 followed, the first only a minute later. The Northridge earthquake death toll was 57, and property damage was estimated at $13 to $50 billion. On March 27th, 1994, another natural disaster struck. This time it affected 5 states. It was Palm Sunday in the Bible Belt when 29 confirmed tornadoes ripped through Texas, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. The deadliest of the 29 tornadoes was rated an F4. 40 people lost their life, and the damage was estimated at $140 billion. On June 17th, Everyone was glued to their television as O.J. Simpson led a low-speed pursuit while riding passenger in a 1993 white Ford Bronco, driven by his friend. O.J. was a person of interest in the murder that occurred 5 days prior of his ex Nicole Brown Simpson and her partner Ron Goldman. Before I get started on the case, I want to give a huge shout out to Michelle B. for all her hard work. She helped me with the research on this episode. In fact, she basically did about 75% of it. I cannot even begin to express how thankful I am for her help. On November 20th, 1994, 22-year-old Stacy Erickson left her home where she lived with her husband on the Air Force Base. She had her 4-year-old daughter and her infant son. Mr. Erickson was deployed during this time, so since her hands were full, her friend and coworker Jennifer would call her, make sure she was awake, and then normally they'd ride together. But on this day, Stacy wanted to get gas in her truck. Jennifer spoke to Stacy on the phone around 6:10 a.m. During this time in Jacksonville, a woman and her fiancé were eating at the Waffle House. When they had an argument, the woman refused to get in her fiancé's car and walked to the Shell stop next door to use the phone. She was approached by a man offering her a ride. She refused, and not long after her fiancé arrived, she got in and they took off. The couple said that he then followed them and shined his bright lights, causing them to pull into the Air Force Base for help. Stacy Erickson was most likely leaving the base around this time. She was on her way to the gas station after she dropped her kids off at the babysitter around 6:30 a.m. Around 6:45 a.m., Stacy can be seen on video stopping at the Shell stop in Jacksonville. This is where the same man approaches Stacy at gunpoint, forcing her into the passenger seat of her own truck. Williams drives Stacy to 18 different ATMs to withdraw money, for a total of $350. After the 18th ATM, he drove her to Redmond Road storage unit, where he binded her hands behind her back using a cord from her jacket. Williams then raped Stacy, leaving bite marks on her lip and tongue. Next, Williams takes Stacy to an area of the Riverfront Park in North Little Rock, where he beats her, chokes her, and leaves her body in a shallow grave. He then abandons her truck behind a service station located about 2 miles from the last ATM. Back at Arkansas Pediatrics, where Stacy works, her coworkers started to worry because she didn't call in or show up. Stacy was a nurse technician working with disabled children while studying to become a respiratory therapist. At the end of the day, when Stacy didn't show up at the babysitter's house, the babysitter contacted her mom. Her mother immediately started driving around looking for her when she discovered Stacy's abandoned truck with multiple ATM receipts in the seat. Her mother knew something was wrong and contacted authorities right away. North Little Rock police obtained the video surveillance from the ATMs, and as they watched the video, her face told them everything they needed to know. Stacy and Tracy Sullivan were born on December 15, 1971, in Pulaski County, Arkansas. They never knew their father, leaving their mom, Carolyn Moore, a single parent. When Stacy was just barely 18, she married her first husband, Robert Riley, on February 17, 1990. They had one child together, a girl, Brittany. A few days short of a year later, divorce papers were filed. Stacy found love again and married John Erickson on April 14, 1993. John was in the Air Force, and they lived on base in Jacksonville. They had one child together, a boy named Brian. John was originally from New Jersey and was 2 years younger than Stacy. Stacy's mom said that she was determined to give her kids a good life. She was attending school, raising her kids while her husband was deployed, and working full-time at a pediatric clinic. She was working hard to become a respiratory therapist. Stacy Erickson was about to turn 23 when she was taken from her husband and her children. Only 2 days after kidnapping Stacy, Marcel Williams kidnaps another woman from North Little Rock. Williams took her to an abandoned home, raped her, put her in the closet, and left her there to die. This woman was able to break free, though. The next day, on November 23rd, Williams kidnapped and raped a Cabot woman, who also broke free and lived. These 3 women are the only victims that we know about. It's pretty clear that he was a serial rapist. The North Little Rock police arrested him on November 29th for an outstanding warrant and suspicion that he was involved with Erickson's disappearance and the 2 sexual assaults of the other women. Williams waived his rights under Miranda and was then questioned for 13 hours. During the questioning, he changed his story over and over again. He admitted to kidnapping and robbing Stacy, but denied having anything to do with the sexual assault or her disappearance. He claimed that 2 of his friends, North Point and Ray, were the ones who raped and beat Stacy, leaving her in an area that he called a hole in the wall by the riverfront park. Eventually, they would get the truth out of him. The police began searching the area of the riverfront park, near where he said she was left. They stumbled upon a shallow grave where Stacy Erickson was left. The medical examiner identified the cause of death. She also had some of Williams' semen in her. After further investigation, they located Stacy's pantyhose with Williams' DNA on them and her lunch bag in the storage shed. She also had some of Williams' semen in her. Marcel Williams was charged with capital murder, kidnapping, rape, and aggravated robbery. In March of 1995, his bond was revoked, and on April 19, 1995, a mental examination was ordered. Associate Professor of Psychology at University of Massachusetts, researches psychological trauma. He was the psychologist that evaluated Williams for any possible trauma and the impact of trauma. He conducted 2-hour-long interviews with Williams, an interview with his sister, an interview with his cousin, Rodney, and an interview with his mother, Sarah. During the evaluation, it was found that Marcel Williams was exposed to pretty much every category of traumatic experience that is generally used to describe childhood trauma. Williams never knew his biological father. His mother told him that he was killed by a woman he abused. When his mother married his stepdad, Marcel was about 2 or 3. When the psychologist tried to interview her, she was first very defensive and painted a completely different story of Marcel's childhood. She did admit that he was physically and mentally abused by his stepdad, especially because he rejected Williams. Marcel could constantly hear him telling his mother that he is not my child, I don't give a shit about him. He would refuse to spend money on him, especially during the holidays. She also talked about Marcel's sexual abuse, but made it seem like the older women having sexual intercourse with her 12-year-old son were his girlfriend. The truth was that his mother was basically soliciting Marcel, and the other women were molesting this child. His stepdad and mom would use their fists, belt buckles, and extension cords to beat him, even going as far as burning him purposely. He specifically remembers a few times that she used boiling water and an electric coil to burn him. William's memories of the burns were fragmented. He remembered a time when his mom called him over to the stove where she was standing, and she just started pouring boiling water all over his arm. He couldn't remember what he did, but he vividly remembers the scalding flesh. He was actually taken to the hospital this time, and the records do show that a nurse suspected abuse but said nothing. She was basically his voice, but chose to keep quiet. Williams spoke a little about the abuse, but his cousin was actually the person who went into great detail. His cousin had witnessed many of these hideous beatings. Marcel's mother was also a drug addict. When Marcel was around 9 or 10, he was in the presence of his mother and his mother's friend. His mom pulled his pants down and showed her friend his genitals. She was saying something to the effect of, "Look at that, he's going to make some women happy one day." The friend's name was Diane, and she was the first older woman to molest Marcel. His mom would solicit him for sexual favors to older women. They even lived with Diane for a short time, and during that time that she let them stay there, his mother was paying her with Marcel. Between the ages of 8 and 12, he was sexually abused by at least 2, maybe more males. His mother brought men into the home routinely. It's possible that she was also soliciting sex. He specifically remembers being sexually abused by some of these men. By 12, this was a routine. When he was 17, he was sent to prison and he was gang raped. The trauma that he went through is said to instill a sense of worthlessness, anger, and control. I understand how that could fuck someone up, but a lot of people have a fucked up life and don't go out and rape and kill multiple people. On August 31st, 1995, a judge noted that Marcel Williams was fit to proceed with trial, and so it began on January 6, 1997, a little over 2 years after Stacy's murder. During the defense counsel's opening statement, they conceded guilt but challenged the state's evidence, which included autopsy photos, photos of Stacy's partially decomposed body being removed from the shallow grave, ATM videos, testimony of the other women, and Williams' statement to the police. During the penalty phase, Stacy's mother testified that when they went to visit Stacy's grave to bring her flowers, Brittany began digging a hole and said she was going to be with her mama. She would often wish that the man would come and get her so she can be with her mama too. It's absolutely heartbreaking. The jury unanimously recommended the death penalty. Even though Williams did eventually admit to the murder, he would file appeal after appeal. In 2007, after years of the state upholding his conviction, the federal judge ruled that Marcel's lawyers were unconstitutionally inadequate because the jury didn't have a chance to hear about his traumatic childhood, stating that the mitigating circumstances would have sentenced him to life, not death. In 2009, Arkansas appealed the federal court's ruling, stating that Williams was not entitled to a federal hearing and his death sentence was reinstated. In 2010, the U.S. Supreme Court declined to take the case, and on April 25, 2011, Governor Mike Beebe set an execution date for July 12, 2011. In June of 2011, Williams requested clemency and was denied. But 2 days before his execution, Arkansas Supreme Court issued Williams a stay of execution in connection with the lawsuit being filed against the state, saying that midazolam causes pain and suffering. This lawsuit was dismissed. Later that year in October, the Federal Appeals Court upheld the dismissal. Williams filed a motion for a rehearing, which was denied by the U.S. Supreme Court in June 2012. In March of 2013, the Arkansas Supreme Court lifted the stay, followed by Williams filing another suit, challenging the lethal injection method and opposing to the lifting of the stay. By September 2015, Williams had exhausted all of his appeals, and Attorney General Leslie Rutledge requested that Governor Hutchinson set an execution date for Williams. The following month, a Pulaski County Circuit Judge halted any scheduled executions. It was February 27, 2017, when the governor set Marcel Williams' execution date for April 24, 2017. Not long after, a month later, Williams had his clemency hearing on March 27, 2017. During this hearing, Williams' original defense attorney joined via Circuit TV. He was visibly emotional and even put his head down on the desk while weeping. He told Williams that he was shortchanged in life and in his defense. He said, "I'd give anything to protect you." The second rape victim after Stacy was a witness at the hearing and stated that Williams found God, and it made no sense to her to kill another human being willfully. She looked at Williams and said, "I forgive you." The babysitter was also a witness. She stated that Williams was the boogeyman and didn't deserve mercy. Stacy's mother pointed out that Stacy and Tracy were raised without a father, and they never even went to jail. Williams said, "I wish I could take it back, but I can't. I'm sorry." A few days later, clemency was rejected. As the execution date approached, Williams' attorneys were still fighting to stop the execution. April 18th, they claimed that because he is over 400 pounds and suffers from type 2 diabetes and sleep apnea, that the execution could end up being botched. The U.S. District Judge responded in a 3-page decision explaining that these conditions existed years before and could have been addressed then. Marcel Williams sat on death row for 23 years, the same amount of years that Stacy got to live on this earth. On April 24, 2017, Internal Affairs arrived and started their log at 2:16 p.m. Williams is given his final meal, 3 pieces of fried chicken, fried potato wedges and ketchup, nacho chips with chili cheese sauce and jalapenos, banana pudding ice cream, and 2 16-ounce bottles of Mountain Dew. All of a sudden, they no longer gave a shit about his diabetes and obesity. Williams finished his meal by 4:15 p.m. Williams' attorneys filed a motion for a stay with the Arkansas Supreme Court, alleging that his attorney had used 10 pages of plagiarized material in Williams' 14-page brief. At 5:31 p.m., the Attorney General filed a response to the motion, claiming that they were filing just to cause a delay. At 7:06 p.m., Jack Henry Jones' execution began, and at 7:20 p.m., he is pronounced dead. At 7:33 p.m., the Arkansas Supreme Court denied a stay request for Marcel Williams. At 8:13 p.m., Williams was escorted to the chambers. At 8:21 p.m., the media is reporting that U.S. District Judge Christine Baker issued a stay on the execution of Williams until 8:30 p.m. Williams' attorneys argued that the execution of Jones was botched, and further evidence that midazolam does not sedate the prisoner sufficiently. At 8:33 p.m., a response is filed by the Attorney General saying the claim that Jones' execution appeared to be torturous and inhumane is utterly baseless. At 8:48 p.m., Williams was removed from the chambers and put in his cell. At 9:26 p.m., the stay is lifted and the escort team arrived. Williams is then removed from his cell at 9:27 p.m. They begin restraining Williams at 9:28 p.m. and finish by 9:30 p.m., and the escort team exits. The witnesses enter the viewing room at 9:30 p.m. At 9:32, the chamber and viewing room doors are locked. They start the catheter at 9:35 p.m. and finish almost an hour later at 10:15 p.m. The director places 2 phone calls, and the curtains to the viewing room are opened. In the viewing room are 19 witnesses, including the babysitter, Trista, Stacy's mother, Kerrigan, 3 media witnesses, 2 attorneys, and 1 spiritual advisor. Williams is asked if he has a final statement, and he shook his head no. Warden advises the officials that they're ready to proceed with the execution at 10:16 p.m., and the chemicals are administered. At 10:31 p.m., the warden summons the coroner. The coroner enters, and Williams is pronounced dead at 10:33 p.m. Stacy's twin brother made a simple statement following the execution. Justice has been served. It's about time. Thanks again, y'all, for downloading episode 25 of Strictly Homicide. Don't forget to tell all your friends to listen and subscribe to Strictly Homicide. Before I end this episode and play a few promos from podcasts I love, I want to give a special shout out to Justin with Mysterious Circumstances. This is a podcast that everyone should be listening to. His episodes on Jason Dillinger are phenomenal. So go check it out on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. Now stay tuned to listen to a promo from True Crime Deadline and Just the Tipster. Strictly Homicide is written, hosted, and produced by me, Nicki T. The original music is done by Mr. T. No, not that one. My Mr. T.
If you are a fan of the show, please make sure you are subscribed on iTunes and please rate and review the show. You can also find us on Patreon where you can support the show for as little as $1 a month.
If there is a case that you would like to discuss, or if you have any comments, corrections, or suggestions, send us an email at strictlyhomicide@yahoo.com or on social media. You can find us on most social media sites by searching Strictly Homicide Podcast and on Twitter as @StrictlyHMICIDE. That's Strictly Homicide with no O. Stick around to hear a few promos from some of the best podcasts around, and until next time, y'all stay safe, especially you, Arkansas.
From the Hollywood Hills to your ear holes, this is True Crime Deadline.
I'm Matt Johnson, boots on the ground reporter and host of True Crime Deadline, the podcast that gives you a unique reporter's point of view from the yellow crime scene tape to the gavel in the courtroom. We paint a picture on True Crime Deadline with murder, mystery, and missing persons cases. My contacts grant you access to those case files with disturbing new details and exclusive interviews. Details might have you thinking, no, that didn't happen. They didn't do that, did they? And then there's the Oprah-inspired Where Are They Now? Binge these 30-minute Crime Bite episodes where you get your podcasts. Buckle up, investigators. You're on deadline.
For more information about the podcast, visit truecrimedeadline.com. Until next time.
Hello, tipsters. This is Melissa Morgan. I'm the host of Just the Tipsters True Crime Podcast, because people are awful and they kill each other. Tipsters, this is Melissa Morgan, the host of Just the Tipsters True Crime Podcast. Have you ever wanted to kill anyone? Hey, tipsters, my name's Melissa Morgan, and I'm the host of Just the Tipsters True Crime Podcast, America's favorite true crime podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcast. I don't know where you can find us. How about that? Just find us and listen, and you'll really like it. Is that okay?
Just the Tipsters with Melissa Morgan is actually available on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe, rate, review. You'll be glad you did.